Thicker Than Blood, Book 4 in the Contagion Regime series. Chapter 1. Beryl, let me in. I'm already behind the door. I've been there the whole time. My neighbour has been banging on it, shouting, demanding I let her in. I don't want to let her in. She's one of those people who goes to church every week, thinks of herself as a Christian, but when she does an ailing neighbour the favour of taking them for a doctor's appointment, she then tells everyone about it and insists she must be a very kind person. She tries to smile self-deprecatingly, but you know she is watching you out of the corner of her eye to make sure you look sufficiently admiring. The ailing neighbour in question, Catherine, tells me that she's grateful for the lift. She knows that Kim tells everyone how wonderful she is for taking her. But she's still grateful. It's an easy way to get to the doctor, and she doesn't begrudge Kim her feeling of being a good person. Whereas I hold it against her that she can't do a good thing without telling the world about it, regardless of how that might make the recipient of it feel. I have been described as too binary in how I think. Oh, my best friend from school, Thea, so long ago lost to a jealous husband, always used to tell me I was too black and white about these things. Maybe she's right, and I should try harder to be understanding. Okay, I will. But not today. Today, I know that Kim wants in. She wants into my house because she doesn't want to be alone in her own house. She thinks she will be safer in my house than in her own. She's right. She would be. She's also incredibly nosy and wants to rootle through my house until there is nothing about me she doesn't know. Kim is all about making other people responsible for her. She expected her husband to look after her. She expected her children to take responsibility for her. She drove them all away. So now she's starting on her neighbours. And, unfortunately, I'm the closest. All that time, when the neighbour on the other side of her would gently suggest she buy 2 tins of tuna instead of 1 every week for just in case, and she'd laugh like a scornful drain and shout, "Oh, you paranoid!" All that time when I'd have my shopping delivered, and I'd meet the delivery person at the door wearing a mask. I'd wear a mask if I had to go anywhere that involved other people's breath lingering in the air I had to breathe. Or I did before wearing a mask became too dangerous. Then she'd be even more patronizing and offensive. "Oh, you, it's only a cold. Fancy wearing a nappy on your face because you're afraid of a cold." I never once asked her why she insisted on wearing those frilly blouses of hers. They looked like they'd been made out of doilies over which strawberry milkshake had been spilled. I never asked her that, did I? No, but she seemed to think she had the right to comment on what other people chose to wear about their person. The nerve of it. But I pride myself on showing the world what I want it to see, not what it thinks it has the right to see. That way, I'm always underestimated. That way I'll survive longer than most, I reckon. Poor Kim. She has had viroflux so often she can't even connect the dots. VF damages the brain. That's why she can't work it out. She's no longer capable. She can't match up the screaming tinnitus, the heart attack, the ulcer that won't heal, the loss of short-term memory with how often she's had VF. She is violently opposed to hearing of any association between any kind of ill health with VF. As are most people. After all, you only get VF if you're physically and morally weak in the first place. No one admits to ever having had it. The propaganda has been so successful that everyone thinks that having VF is shameful. Not everyone. Some people think for themselves, but not Kim. "Beryl, you can't manage in there all by yourself. You need me to help you." She is so thick she's screeching to the world that I live alone. I wonder how many looters are listening to her. That alone would stop me having her in my house. She's a liability, a self-centered, untrustworthy, loose cannon. I'm fed up with it now, so I wander out of the lobby, down the hall, and into the breakfast room, where Claude's at the table planning one of his anarchist comics. He looks up and says, "Are you going to let her in?" Don't be daft. Don't you feel sorry for her? Someone who says stupid things like, "I'd rather die than wear a mask." Really? She'd rather leave her children and grandchildren without a mother and grandmother because she feels self-conscious in a mask? She values what politicians say more than years with her family. I leave a pause for if Claude wants to say something. He doesn't. So I carry on. Even though all the politicians protect themselves in their places of work and their homes with all the precautions under the sun, including filtration units, UV testing, etc., they have all the vaccinations they deny the rest of us, and have all the antivirals at the ready should something still get through. But, VF doesn't exist anymore, Claude says. Oi, I say, half laughing. Are you taking the mick? I'm just saving you the trouble of saying it. He does make me laugh, Claude. He has heard my rants before, of course, and he's not afraid to let me know it, which I like. I can't be doing with yes people. Kim is still shouting at the front door. She wants to bring disease into my house because she doesn't believe in it. Kim's other neighbour did take pity on her. He did take her in. She then did the whole aren't I kind thing and handed out his stores to other people because good people share in times of scarcity, which, predictably, led to his house being ransacked, his family's stores stolen, and him being beaten up. He is still recovering. So after she'd ruined his security, she went back to her own home, and now she wants to get in my house, not because she knows I have prepared for times of scarcity, but because she wants someone else to be responsible for her. She wants someone else to take all the risks so she can take all the rewards, all because she's such a good person. She's still banging on my door, and I'm running out of patience with it. Now, Claude said, don't do anything you'll regret. I can't think what you mean. I jump up, put on a mask, run down the hall, into the lobby, and open the door. She tries to push the door open further, but I have my foot behind it. What do you want, Kim? I want to come in with you. We're better off together. People are always better off together. It's the human instinct to be together. It depends on the human. Oh, come on, Beryl. Show your Christian spirit. I have none. I try to be a decent human being. I don't believe in being told what to think. Surely you'll take me in rather than leave me alone out here in this harsh, cruel world. You were taken in by Derek and his family. Look what you did to them. You ruined them. You got them ransacked and beaten. I was only trying to help others. The look of virtue on her face made me ache to slap it. You weren't, though, were you? You weren't actually trying to help others. You just wanted to look as if that was what you were doing, with someone else's resources, and you hadn't asked Derek and his family if you could do it. It's their house, and you just went ahead and did what you wanted. You're splitting hairs, Beryl. You need me. You don't want to be on your own either, not in the world we live in now. How very thoughtful of you, Kim. She is entirely unaware of my sarcasm. She thinks she has me fooled. But I'm not alone. Why don't you go and join your sons? They'll realize what kind of benefit you'd be to their household. Good luck. And I step back, shut the door, lock and bolt it loudly. I stay there for a while until I hear her walk back down my path and then up hers and into her house. Then I open the lobby door and go into the hall. There I find one of Kim's sons waiting for me. You're incredibly polite to her, Noah says. In fact, you've always been incredibly polite to Mum, even after all these years of her living next door. Always meddling, always judging, always trying to undermine. Noah's been staying here with me for a few weeks now. He and his brother, Eden, had been forced to leave the place they'd been living in when Kim managed to track them down. As soon as she turned up, they knew they were no longer safe. Kim is such a good woman, she cannot tolerate that Noah is gay and that Eden was born a girl. Apparently, it's the good Christian thing to report such anomalies to the authorities, who would straighten them out by the grace of God. Good grief. Noah and Eden lived on the streets until Noah suggested they come to me. They'd come to me throughout their childhood when things had got too much for them at home. But Eden was too scared. It was too close to her, too close to that woman. He still lived on the streets, and I was still racking my brains for a way to bring him here to relative safety. I always try to be polite. It makes it hard for anyone to know what I really think. Noah flashed me a smile. We walked down the hall into the breakfast room. I notice Noah's hand linger on Claude's shoulder as we pass him. Inwardly, I smile. How wonderful that even in all the misery of this harsh world, some love can be found. Let's do some work on the tunnel, I say, and Noah follows me out the back of the house. While I inspect the runner beans on their double-row trellis, Noah disappears into the shed. I pinch out the tips of the plants and tie in stragglers with soft cord. Runner beans are thirsty plants, so I go back and forth a few times with the watering can from the rainwater collection butts. Noah still hasn't appeared, so I also check for green and black fly, removing by hand any I spot. No insecticide for us. All our veg is definitely organic. Then Noah appears. He looks grubby and tired. That had been quite a long stint down the tunnel. He looks pleased with himself. "I think we must be nearly through," he says. "Once we have a back way in, I'm sure Eden will feel safe enough to come here. I think I'll do another shift after dark. I'm very worried about him out there." I pat his arm. No point saying anything. What was there to say? I was worried, too. The streets were no place for anyone, let alone anyone as vulnerable as Eden. He didn't have the killer instinct his brother or his mother had. He was altogether a much gentler, much nicer person. We had his room ready. All we had to do was finish the tunnel and then find Eden and persuade him to come home with us. My last thing at night, Coco, always made me a bit thoughtful. Only, instead of thinking over the day that was almost done, I tended to think over the years. We had years in which people said bad things were on their way. For years, anyone who warned about shortages and outages and systems failing would be greeted by an eye roll and told to stop being Chicken Little. The sky wasn't falling, apparently. Then bad things that were obviously bad started to happen. Things like the Ghost Day event were obvious and bad, but still there were people who'd say, "Oh, don't be so negative. It'll work out to our advantage. Just you wait and see." Neighbours fell out, families divided, inflation rampaged, wars flared abroad, fascists were on the march everywhere, and then the viroflux arrived, and suddenly people agreed that things were bad, until they were fed another basis on which they could be divided. Social media amplified it with bot farms, deliberate disruption, deliberate rabble-rousing, troublemaking between those who believed in VF and took steps to avoid it, and people who didn't. So people died. The world became a very bleak place. No one trusted anyone. Rightly so. And everyone knew that everything would get worse when no one could see how it could get better. So some people started to build up a stash. Except for all those who still insisted that everyone else was being negative Nellies. We all became familiar with the idea of buying an extra tin every time we went shopping, an extra loo roll, an extra bottle of squash. But most people poo-pooed the very idea of preparing for catastrophe. Most of us were too used to no catastrophe, no war, no scarcity, for decades. Those who attempted to prepare were derided and avoided. Same as those who attempted to protect their own health after viroflux struck. One lad from the next street over was attacked for wearing a mask. He was so badly beaten, he lost the sight in one eye. Those of us who had been wearing masks were abused so often for it that we became quite fearful, and for the sake of our own safety, stopped wearing them. However, we were not going to pretend VF suddenly didn't exist. That would make us stupid as well as fearful. So we used nasal spray to protect ourselves when we were forced to go out and breathe air that others had breathed before us. Nasal spray became one of our best-kept secrets. We didn't want people in the street having nasal spray detectors shoved up their noses. We were used to people being abused and beaten, but a detector up a nose was an abuse too far. It had to be used surreptitiously, as any mitigation was frowned upon by true patriots. Excuse me while I snort and swear a bit. Of course, it then became difficult to get hold of it. A black market sprang up, then collapsed under raids and imprisonments. Before long, the remaining sources were too scattered to be of any use to us here. So I set up my own. I nearly did it in the garden shed. That would have made a certain kind of sense, and I did think about it for a while. But the shed already had other things going on, and I needed this to stay quiet. Really quiet. The attic had advantages over the garden shed. Not least, I could more reliably keep it secret. Feeling unable to settle for the night, I went up there now, softly treading from step to step so Noah and Claude didn't hear me. Unlocking the attic door, I stepped inside, leaned back against it, and locked myself in. A motion sensor low light came on. It was nothing that could be seen from outside, not with the blackout blinds down. It pleased me to look at the orderly rows of small glass bottles and the stacks of finished nasal sprays in their thousands ready for distribution. knowing I was helping to keep so many people safe. Of course, they weren't labelled nasal spray. They were made up to look like personal care sprays, the sort of thing people carried without thinking about it. Distribution was a problem. I didn't want anyone to know I had anything to do with them. That was solved by paying some of the street people to move small numbers at a time and leave them in resistance safe boxes. Street people had learned the hard way to being curious about everything. They simply did as they were asked for a tin of beans or whatever that day's currency was. The result was that no one knew the sprays came from me, and I didn't know where they ended up. I busied myself making up some bags of sprays to spread around the neighborhood's safe spaces tomorrow. They started off with the usual tin of beans in them as payment, but I went back and added in a tin of tuna. I was feeling grateful for my life, my house and my friends, and I had plenty of tins of fish. I put all the tins in their own bubble wrap bags so they wouldn't give out betraying clinks later on when carried. I'd been prepping long before anyone even knew the word prepping. I had done it very carefully indeed, so that no one suspected. No one knew I was any more prepared for anything than anyone else. After the Ghost Day event was followed by the Viroflux, everything went to hell in a handcart. Inflation rocketed, shortages appeared everywhere, and suddenly the pretense that community still existed and people helped each other disappeared like mist in the morning sun. Those in power, whether in government or in the large corporations, who were really the country's rulers, did everything they could to keep everyone at each other's throats. They were depressingly successful. So I'd already spent many years getting an extra tin with every shopping trip. After always having my hair cut and coloured, I let it grow out, as if I could no longer afford to have it done. I was pleased to find it was white, and not that steel grey colour many have. I lost weight along with everyone else. Mine was a choice. Theirs was because food was scarce. I wished I'd been motivated enough to do it before. You have to still turn up in the queue for the rations doled out in situations like this. The bottled water, the cans of beans, stew, and vegetables, sometimes rice pudding. If you don't turn up, your neighbours wonder why. So, I had plenty, and could afford to give the street people 2 tins instead of 1 for distributing the sprays. Even through all the scarcities, and the unpleasantness, and the uncertainty and illness, many people like Kim still found the energy and inclination to victimize people they thought weren't the right kind of people. Instead of trying to make their community a better, more secure place, they were obsessed with making it a pure place. Many people had moved in with each other. That's what all the prepping manuals tell you. Find or form your community. But I was sick of living with people long before any bad things happened. I certainly didn't want to live with them afterwards. The only trouble then was my security. A woman alone in a house was a target, so I'd always said my son still lived at home. He was a bit reclusive and did all his work from his room, so he wasn't often seen. But my big strapping son lives with me, and he used to play rugby, when team sports still existed, that is. So I was safer than I would have been alone. That's what the neighbours thought anyway. I carried the prepared bags downstairs, tiptoeing past Noah's room and descending to the ground floor. They only went out in small batches, so that if any were found, not so many were lost. They had to go through another stage between me and the street people too. They had to be posted into a locked box hidden in the hedge at the bottom of my back garden. I don't even know who collected them from the box. It wasn't my business. After switching off the security light that would usually come on if someone was in the garden, I slipped out the back door. I clutched the bags to my chest to keep them from making any noise. The moonless night felt heavy and thick with shadows, perfect for my purposes. My garden routes were memorized in my muscles, every dip and rise known by heart, so I was happy moving around in the dark. The lockbox waited, nestled deep in the hedge at the garden's end. Not obvious, but not impossible to find if you knew where to look. Getting to it was the trick. I'd planted the pyracantha strategically, its vicious thorns a natural defense. Those bright orange berries looked so friendly, but the thorns could slice through skin like tissue paper. I shifted the bags to one arm and reached carefully into the hedge. I found the metal box, unlocked it, and one by one, transferred each package into it, counting in my head as I did so. A sound stopped me cold, a rustle from the direction of the shed. I froze, my hand still inside the box. My heart stuttered. The shed stood dark and solid in the shadows, its weathered wood shading into the night. Holding my breath, I strained my ears. There it came again, a soft scrape, like something heavy being shifted. Then silence. Noah? Had he decided to work on the tunnel after all? No. He would have told me. He always did. He was careful that way, methodical, like me, and he knew better than to venture out without warning, especially at night. The box. I needed to secure the box first. Turning back, I closed it and worked the combination lock with fingers that suddenly felt thick and clumsy. One wrong turn, and I'd have to start again, exposed and vulnerable. Each click of the dial seemed thunderous in the silence. Finally, the lock snapped shut. I drew my hand back through the gap in the pyracantha, a thorn catching my sleeve. I had to tug it free, which seemed to shatter the night with the noise of cannons. But of course, it didn't. Another sound from the shed. Distinct now. Movement inside. Someone was in there, someone who shouldn't be. I eased away from the hedge, placing each foot with great care. Grass muffled my steps as I angled toward a spot where the raspberry canes would shield me while giving me a view of the shed door. Yes, the door was closed. The padlock glinted dully in what little ambient light filtered into the garden. Still locked, still wedged shut as Noah had left it hours ago. But something, or someone, was definitely inside. My mind raced through possibilities, each worse than the last. A looter who'd found another way in? Someone who'd been watching the house? Who knew about the tunnel? Someone who'd followed Noah back here? Or someone who knew about the sprays? Crouching lower behind the raspberry canes, I stared at the shed door, even though I knew whoever it was couldn't open it from the inside. Another sound, louder now, as if they were throwing precaution to the winds. I needed a weapon. I glanced around in the darkness, seeing nothing useful within reach. The garden fork was inside the shed. The shears hung on the wall by the back door, too far away. The shed door creaked as if someone had leaned on it. Once, twice, then stopped. Whoever was in there knew they were locked in. What would they do next? I had seconds to decide. Run back to the house and wake Noah and Claude. Try to reinforce the door to make even more certain they couldn't get out into the garden. Or face whoever was in there myself.